What type of foods are good for health? There is so much confusion out there. We are bombarded with information, but we don't know what's really the truth about what's good and what's not good. So, join me in listening to Mary Purdy, who is going to educate us on balancing our nutritional meals so that we can stay healthy. Hello, I am Rajitha Bommakanti, registered nurse, faith based holistic coach, and founder of Healthy You Lifestyle Center. If you want to develop healthy habits for life, one step at a time, click the red subscribe button and the bell icon right now. Nutrition is on the mind of many people, but it also confuses because of all the ads out there. We are bombarded with them. So listen to my conversation with Mary Purdy, who is an integrative and eco dietitian, and she is currently a adjunct faculty at Bastyr University. Hello, Mary. Thank you for joining us today. I
You.
welcome you to our conversation here. Um,
I'm happy to be here. Happy to share in the conversation with you. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Just quick question to ask you: how did you get interested in nutrition?
Oh my
Uh,
God. Well, how much time do we have? I'll try and Um, ever since I was a kid, when I was 10 years old or 12 years old, I was reading the New York Times section. I grew up in New York City and I was reading Jane Brody and learning about food and discovering about broccoli. And I always knew that food had something to do with how I felt and it would enable me to live longer. So somehow I just found that information incredibly inspiring. And then when my dad got really sick about 15 years ago or 17 years ago now, um, there was a real strong connection for me personally between the relationship of how food might help him to heal and how it might help him to maybe have prevented the disease to begin with. And I really made sure that I made this a central piece of my life. So that was it. So I totally switched gears with careers. Sometimes those personal experiences drive you to the next phase of your life, and that was definitely true for me.
wow, that is great. So, since at a young age you knew your purpose in life, what you wanted to do, your direction, so that is wonderful to know. Not many people know that early stages, what they want to do.
I wonder if it was less about my professional goals at that young age and more about personal goals of wanting to live to be 100, which is a goal I still have, I will tell you that. So I basically was excited about living really for a long time when I was a kid. I didn't necessarily realize that it was something you could do for a living. I wanted to be in the theater when I was that age. So
Oh, wow.
that
Wow.
was cool.
Okay. Well, as we are in our theater talking to each other, um, I wanted to ask you about, last few weeks since we have had this COVID-19 pandemic, people are more concerned about boosting their immunity, how to do. That's just been like a wildfire. How do I boost my immunity so that I can, keep this coronavirus out of my way? So, what are some of the things that they can do to boost their immunity?
Yeah, and one thing that I try and be aware of is language, because I think for some people boosting immunity is not the word that they feel is appropriate. I've gotten some pushback from that around that word, so I prefer to say support immune function. And when we are supported from a nutritional perspective, we are more likely to be able to fight off infections overall, whether that's COVID-19 or something else. There's an increased likelihood of being able to both fight off potential infections and as well as to recover more readily or to have more positive outcomes when we do recover.
Oh, wow. Okay, that supporting uh, immune system, that is. much better way of saying it, because that's what we are here for, to support. I'll remember that. Thank you.
Yeah, and because I think if we think about boosting, very often with something like COVID-19, you actually don't want to be boosting your immune system because COVID-19 interacts with your body in a way that actually induces more inflammatory cytokines, those chemical mediators that actually are an overreaction of your immune system. So we don't want to overdo it on the immune system. We want to modulate the immune system so that it responds accordingly.
Yeah. Keep
Yeah.
homeostasis.
Yes. Bravo. Yes.
Okay, good. So is there any foods that you recommend hydration on a regular basis? Because this is not just during the time of the pandemic, right? We
Yeah.
have to have this balance at all time to keep our bodies healthy and fit.
Absolutely. So, I mean, nutrition is foundational to our immune system. And anybody who's working even in academia around this will tell you that our nutrition status is going to determine how our immune system responds. So while there's no guarantee that anything that we say, like if you eat this, that protects you, there's not necessarily a guarantee. We do know that when our immune system is fortified, when it is working, when it is operational, when it is functional, that we are less likely to be susceptible to diseases. So yeah, so there's numerous nutrients that support our immune function. I'll name a few if that's okay. And then we talk about some food sources of those. So zinc is a critical part of our immune function. Vitamin A, vitamin D, these are just three really big ones. So, zinc is found in a lot of animal foods, but it's also found in things like sunflower seeds and pumpkin seeds. It's found in cashews. And the status of zinc is also determined by our own digestive status. So for instance, if we don't have a strong digestive function, if we're not absorbing zinc properly, that can have an impact on our zinc status. And one of the things that actually affects zinc are certain medications known as proton pump inhibitors or acid reflux or anti-acid antacids, basically, that diminish the amount of stomach acid in our stomachs, and that can have an impact on zinc. So it's not just whether we're taking foods in that are high in zinc, but it's also what is the status of our body's digestive function and the ability to absorb and properly break down zinc from the food that we're eating it in. Does that make sense?
Yes. That actually makes me think, quite a few of them are on these antacids. Right? Because constantly people, popping antacids in, saying that they have heartburn, and some of them have been for a long period of time. And studies have shown the proton inhibitors are not good for a long period of time. That's another issue. But so if they are antacids, so even if they are having adequate amounts of sunflower seeds, cashews, that have zinc in them, it might not absorb very well in their body.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Which is where some supplementation for certain individuals, and again, I always tailor this to meet the personal needs of that patient sitting in front of me. But this is where supplementation might be necessary for certain people. But again, it's going to vary from person to person. And I think as I was mentioning, vitamin A is a key component of our immune system, and that's vitamin A just as its own, that's found in foods naturally, but also the precursor that comes before vitamin A that becomes vitamin A is beta carotene, and that is found in all those bright orange, beautiful vegetables and fruits, as well as the dark leafy greens. It's not orange because it's being colored, overshadowed by the green that's found in chlorophyll. But that vitamin A is really important for our immune system, not only just in terms of protecting us, but also helping, again, to modulate those autoimmune issues as well. So foods that are rich in vitamin A are also really, really important.
Oh, wow. Okay. Thank you for that. And also with this COVID-19, quite a few, the actual virus is affecting more for those who have underlying chronic disease or obesity.
Yeah.
What can people do to improve their lifestyle, to manage their chronic diseases through nutrition?
It's a great question. And I think, one thing that I want to be mindful of again is that we can't go back and say, oh gosh, if only you had eaten well and not got come. I think that can create a source of fear for a lot of people and also a sense of blame. But I also feel like we can use this as an opportunity to feel inward and to empower others in saying there is something you can do. There is something we can do. And so, again, every person is different. Their needs are going to be different, but ensuring that people are able to eat a diet that is rich in those high fiber foods, which are your fruits, your vegetables, your grains, your nuts, and your seed. That's very foundational. And the more bright colored fruits and vegetables, herbs and spices, the better, because those are regulating your body's defense system. So giving you all those antioxidants. And then protein is also a key part of immune system. And fiber really helps with addressing lots of the chronic issues that we're seeing right now. Blood sugar dysregulation, that means, sugars going up and down, diabetes or pre-diabetes, insulin resistance, as well as high cholesterol levels, high blood pressure. All of those can be tempered by a high fiber diet. So that's a really, really foundational piece of eating in a way that helps to prevent and mitigate the effects of chronic diseases. I will say, Rajitha, that one thing that's really important is that it's not just about the choices that people can make, right? It's not just saying like, hey, there's some beans on the shelf over there. Why don't you go over there and make them and eat them? Very often it is about access, what people have access to. It's about affordability. Do people even have a way to get those fruits and vegetables in? It is about the quality of food as a result of an industrialized agricultural system that is changing the nutrient density of our food. And there are a lot of emotional factors that come into what choices people make. So it may not necessarily always be about giving people advice. It may be about trying to understand the underlying root causes that are preventing people from engaging in healthy lifestyle behaviors. And sometimes that goes a lot deeper than what we're able to just say and like, here's 10 tips for you to follow.
Yes, I know that's the reason you could be flooded with information on internet. But again, until we really understand each individual, what
Yes.
their current lifestyle is, what their circumstances are, what their barriers are, their cultural, beliefs, until then we cannot really talk to them and really make a good recommendation. And that recommendation also goes along with their concerns. They are the ones that need to make that plan and be able to follow the plan.
Right. That's where that patient-centered care comes into play, where we're not just telling someone what to do, we're engaging with them in a partnership of conversation and trying to understand where they are at so we can meet them there and say, let's work together to find some solutions that really work for you within the context of your culture, your food access, and your motivation and your ability to make changes. So that is really important.
Yeah, that's where it comes, where we need to take time to talk. When they go to a physician or they don't have that much of time to sit down and talk. And how many times do our docs ask us, what do you eat, or what's your lifestyle, or anything? We don't get that kind of a conversation at a physician's office.
No, there very often is not enough time, which is why I'm so appreciative when physicians actually say, hey, I want you to talk to a dietitian or a certified nutritionist to really touch base about your diet, because it is so foundational. And one of the pieces too that I think often gets missed, and this goes back to that fiber, is our gut health, where so much of our immune system lies. Our gut health is basically dictating how our immune system responds. And so when that is less operational at an optimal level, because of whether it's because of lack of diet, stress, chemical inputs into our body that have an impact on our microbiome, whether there's those good bacteria that are hanging out in our intestines, that really has an impact on immune health as well, and our ability to fight off infection, and also our susceptibility to infections and diseases, including some of those chronic health issues that I'm discussing as well.
Very good. Now that you brought up the gut health, piece of it, if you can tell us a little bit about the gut health, how do we keep our gut health healthy? And which is, after our brain, that's the most important thing, which we don't pay so much attention to it.
Yeah, there's so many different components of healthy gut, right? There's even just supporting digestion with slowing down, chewing your food. Your digestion begins in your mouth, making sure that you are actually taking time with your meals to allow for digestive function to work. There's that, which is just very, very basic. And then number two, there's what are we actually eating? What are we getting in the diet that our gut bugs need in order to function? So fiber is a key piece. So again, coming back to some of those similar foods I was talking about before, your beans, your nuts, your seeds, your vegetables, your garlic, your onions in particular are wonderful foods for your good bacteria. Additionally, our bacteria love what are known as polyphenols, which are the plant chemicals that are found in those bright colored fruits, vegetables, herbs, and spices, berries, and things like that. They actually really thrive on sufficient amounts of those high antioxidant foods. So that's really important. And then number three is what we need to avoid or what we need to minimize in the diet that doesn't support gut health. And those are things like highly refined processed foods, which can actually feed the less favorable bacteria in our gut. So high amounts of processed sugary foods, but also refined carbohydrates from flours. High amounts of meat products, particularly red meat products, can have a negative impact on our gut microbiome. Certain chemicals, pesticides, additives that are found in foods as well can have a negative impact on gut microbiome. So really it's about finding that balance of inclusion of those foods that are supportive and a reduction of the foods or the additives and chemicals that may not necessarily make those bacteria sing in your belly.
Okay. All right. So, we talked about fiber quite a bit in this conversation.
Yeah.
So if I don't like vegetables and I don't want to eat all that fibrous, fruits and vegetables, can I just take a fiber supplement?
Well, are you talking about you personally?
No, just in general, a lot of them go for the fiber supplement. I love my fruits and vegetables.
Yes, I hear this a lot. And I would say, if that is the on-ramp into the world of fiber for you, for somebody, then yeah, let's go for a fiber supplement. If that's the only way to get it in there, I will work with you on that. But number two is I will say, hey, let's find out what it is that you don't like about these foods. Is it the texture? Then let's change the texture. Is it the flavor? Then let's find a flavor that you love. Is it the way it looks on your plate? Then let's actually put it into a smoothie or a soup and blend that up. So I think people think they don't like fruits and vegetables because they've never tasted a fruit and vegetable in a form that's really enjoyable. Maybe because they haven't had access to it, or because it was never cooked in a way that actually made it pleasurable to eat, or the flavor has been completely dissipated by the fact that it hasn't been grown in a way that's allowed it to be enhanced by the natural components of soil and good, healthy gardening. So I think a lot of those things can play a role.
Oh, wow. That is very enlightening to hear that. The soil piece of it, which, it does not occur to most of us how that soil, the health of the soil affects our food. So is it, so are you saying organic food it has been grown in better soil? Or is it any type of food in regards to the soil health?
It can be organic, it can be labeled organic, but there are plenty of farmers out there who are practicing a type of agricultural that may not be certified organic, but it is still utilizing practices that are beneficial to the soil, that are not degrading it, and that are allowing it to be as nutrient dense as it was meant to be, and also to allow it to have all the microbes that it was meant to have as well. Many times, current industrial agriculture is depleting the microbial population of soil because there's so many chemical inputs, fertilizers and adding nitrogen and things that actually are destroying all those wonderful bugs that make the soil rich and nutrient dense, and that then help us to be eating food that is nutrient dense and rich with microorganisms as well. So that can have a big impact. The soil health is going to impact the food health, and whether someone's engaging in organic practices or just regenerative agricultural practices overall, that's going to make a difference. So if we can support those kinds of folks who are working in that way, it's going to be fantastic for our health.
Okay, so are we better off going to the farmer's market and buying our fruits and vegetables when it's available versus in a big supermarket?
I'm always going to recommend, if there's access to farmers markets for somebody, what a wonderful way to connect to your food and to connect to the grower of your food. We tend to be very, very disconnected. We go to the market, we grab something, we put it in a basket. We have no sense of the fact that that was once in the ground being fed by all the different bugs and little critters hanging out in there, and that there was someone who planted that and someone who picked it and someone who harvested it and washed it. So there really is a wonderful component of being at a farmer's market and getting to know people who grew your food and just see how that, or to hear about how that operation actually worked. So yeah, if it's possible, great. If it's not possible, then just keep on buying those fruits and veggies from the store that you have access to.
Okay, all right. As long as we eat those fruits and vegetables, that's the key message.
Absolutely. Yeah. However you want to put them in there. Sometimes I've said, like, if you got to put a little sugar on your vegetables so you like them, that's okay. Just eat the vegetables.
All right. Earlier, you touched based on the meat for the gut health. So in order to have a good, healthy gut health, do people need to stop eating meat completely, or what are we trying to avoid or include for a healthy gut health?
Yeah, and I would say, the consumption of meat can have an impact on gut health, but can also have an impact in excess on cardiovascular health, on insulin resistance as well, and on general inflammatory processes in the body. But what I want to be mindful of as well, and you can tell that I tend to try to work really personalize my recommendations and discussion around topics like this, because there can be a lot of backlash and there can be a lot of sense that, hey, this is my culture, this is the way I grew up, or this is my identity. So I think there can be a place for animal agriculture and meat in the diet, especially when that meat was humanely raised, when it's being consumed mindfully and not in excess, and especially if it has to do with someone's cultural background and it's really important for them. That being said, there's an excessive amount of meat consumption, and meat consumption that comes from animal agriculture that is cruel and inhumane and unhealthy, really, for us. So the quality of the meat that's being produced these days is really not at a quality that is beneficial to humans overall, especially when we're eating it in such large amounts. So I would say, if we can reduce our meat consumption, if someone's eating meat every single day, I'll say, hey, how would you feel about eating meat every other day? Or if someone's eating meat 3 times a day, I'll say, hey, how would you feel about eating meat once a day? So it's working with each individual to find a way that can work for them. And also, people begin to understand how other forms of protein may be unfamiliar to them, and that may be a deterrent as well. So if we can begin to educate people about how to get alternative plant sources of protein in the diet, that's a really important part of helping someone to make those changes, is by offering them really realistic strategies for how to include non-meat options in their life.
Wow. Okay. Thank you. So if somebody is vegan or plant-based meals, whole grains, fruits and vegetables, excuse me, are they getting adequate protein? Because that's the question all the time, because people go to meat for protein.
Right.
So by eating fruits and vegetables and whole grains, are they getting enough protein?
And again, this is going to be vary from person to person, but if someone's just eating fruits and vegetables and whole grains, they may not be getting enough protein. But if we add in all of the beans, and there are so many beans: chickpeas, cannellini beans, azuki beans, lentils, and there's about 14 different types of lentils, maybe at a minimum, right?
Yeah.
And then tofu and tempeh and edamame. So all these different things. I think people forget that a plant-based diet isn't just about having a bowl of spinach and some watermelon. It's about the variety of plant-based foods, like all of the beans, pulses, however you want to call them, lentils, that are out there. It is absolutely possible to get sufficient amounts of protein on a plant-based diet. However, there may be certain people who don't do as well on a fully plant-based diet, who might need a little bit of meat from time to time. Or maybe I have worked with patients who need just a little bit of meat in the winter time or at certain times of the month. Certain women who maybe have heavy menses might need a little bit of meat to feel like their iron stores are back to normal. So it doesn't have to be an all or nothing approach. I'm never a big fan of that, but really trying to tune into your own body. If meat feels like it is an essential part of your life, then eat it mindfully and find the source that you feel most comfortable with eating. And if it doesn't, then go for that plant-based approach and just make sure you're getting all of the nutrient needs met, which is absolutely possible to do.
Okay. Wow. Thank you. So with that being said, can you tell me I know during this COVID time, people have stocked up from supermarkets quite a bit of groceries and things like that. And sometimes they just stay in the fridge. By the time you look at them, they're kind of don't look so good, wilted, or some products close to expiration date. Can they still use that without being wasted? I know that was one of your talks before. I just wanted to touch base if people can still use that in different forms and not waste it.
Yeah, and this is such an important question because we're wasting more than a third of the food that's produced. So approximately 1,200 calories a day from food is wasted. So this is, again, to support that argument, it's not that we're not producing enough food. We're producing plenty of food. We're just wasting a lot of it. So in terms of keeping things in the refrigerator, first of all, it's great to buy foods that last longer in the refrigerator. Some of my favorite foods to recommend are those really hearty vegetables, your beets, your potatoes, your carrots, your cabbage. Those are going to last for a really long time. And if they start to go like, then that's when you throw them into a soup, or that's when you put them into a smoothie, or that's when you actually chop them up and freeze them and use them in a future time. When it comes to the best buy or best if used by or used by, that is really a determination made by the food company or the manufacturer, who is estimating the time by which they think that food will taste its best. Let me repeat that, will taste its best. So this is not about a food that needs to be used by a certain time. And if it's not, you will suddenly, turn green and develop a rash and die. This is about taste. When it comes to meat, that's a little bit of a different situation because there can be bacteria that can grow in meat. But what we have as a tool for ourselves, brilliantly created by whoever designed us as humans, and that's called the old schnoz, the old nose. And that is directly connected with our taste buds as well, that very often you look at something in a refrigerator and you go, oh, that doesn't smell right, so then I'm not going to eat it. But very often it might just be the top of it that doesn't smell right, or a side of it doesn't smell right, and you can chop it off and still use what's underlying in that piece of fruit or vegetable. So just chop off the part that's less pleasing to the nose or the taste buds, and maybe compost that if you can compost it.
All right. Thank you very much, because I do that all the time. Chop off and you can create recipes with whatever you have. That's another thing. People think if there is a recipe, they have to follow exactly step by step. But, with whatever we have in our pantry, in our refrigerator, you can accommodate and create something from it, right? You don't have to run to the grocery store then and there, or say, oh, I don't have ingredients for my recipe, so let me just order out.
Right. Yeah, such a good point. And very often, it's about always making sure that you do have a spice or an herb or a condiment that you love. because even if you don't have the exact recipe right, you know that you got some garlic, or you have some curry powder, or you have some salsa, and you can make whatever it is in your refrigerator probably taste pretty good simply because you have that extra bit of flavor that you know really works for you.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Talking about a cooking thing, let me ask you, a lot of them, I know while people were home, they were cooking and all that, but most of them I hear, saying that I don't have time to cook. I have a busy life. I have 3 to 4 kids. I have to take care of them and work, take them for activities. And it's easy for me to just go out and buy. So
Yeah.
how can they make cooking a part of their life? Any pointers?
Absolutely. I myself am not a big fanatic in the kitchen. I don't like to spend a lot of time there, except every once in a while I'll get a little bit of an inspiration and feel really excited about being there. But I do something that I like to call food assembling. So it may not be about cooking per se and following a recipe, but it may just be about gathering a bunch of foods together and throwing something that maybe is even cold. So this is where sandwiches, I think, can come into play, or even like using tortillas or using pita, and being able to put together some foods that people really, really enjoy. Maybe it's vegetables that have already been chopped. Maybe it's beans that have already been made into a bean dip or a hummus, or maybe it's lentils that have already been made into a dal or something like that. And being able to combine all those things, and where you're not actually making a whole recipe, you're just putting foods together that you enjoy. And it doesn't have to be a big production. I also am a fan of canned soups. For someone who does not want to cook, you can open up a delicious can of very often organic and not that expensive lentil soup, bean soup, minestrone soup, add some additional things in there. That can be great. Another really easy thing to make are eggs. Depending on how people feel about consuming eggs, that's something that you can always whip together. Sometimes I will fry up some eggs, and we have some neighbors who actually give us some duck eggs. So we've been very fortunate to be able to have access to these beautiful ducks that we give them leaves and leftovers from our meals, and they give us their eggs, and it's a lovely symbiotic relationship. But basically, as I'm cooking up the eggs, I put vegetables in them as they are frying up. And then when you turn them over, the vegetables are getting cooked as well. Throw that over, again, a tortilla or a piece of bread, or even some leftover rice that you might have in your refrigerator. And it can be very, very simple. It doesn't have to be a masterpiece every single time you make something in the kitchen.
Oh, wow. Yeah, thank you. And also, when you make something, and if you have too much of it, partially you could take it out and put it in the freezer or something for another time.
Right. Batch cooking. I mean, do you do that where you just make something?
I do that. Yeah, I can't be in the kitchen. I love cooking, but I can't be in the kitchen every day because of my work schedule and all that. So I do batch cooking. I love doing batch cooking, and I dedicate that couple hours of my time in the kitchen, and it's well worth my time.
Absolutely. Like just having chopped things in the refrigerator, or having a soup that you made and you can just unfreeze it and either heat it up on the stove, or if someone has a microwave, boy, it's such a lifesaver, especially when people are tired, they're stressed, and all they want to do is just sit down to something that's easy and ready to go.
Yeah, that's right. That is very, very helpful. Let me ask you, can you give our audience one advice that they can take away, start implementing?
And is this advice around supporting immune function, or is this about overall health? Is there a context to that? What kind of advice?
Their overall health.
Help with that too.
Let's say their overall health. What can they? Because we all have. Most of us have busy lives. You're working mom, taking care of the children. Even though spouses help us and all that, we still have a lot of areas to fill in. And most of the time nowadays, with the advertisements and the fast food arena, it's just tempting to just go out and get food. What is that one thing? How can they, assimilate a healthier lifestyle while running around?
I'm going to go a little bit outside of the box here. And I would say if there is a chance for people to actually take a moment to connect with their food when they are eating, whether that is food that they got from the food bank, food they got from a fancy schmancy restaurant, food that they cooked, food that their kid cooked, food that their mom cooked, to actually take that time to see food as a way to nourish, to de-stress, to connect, and to have that moment of being either with your family, or maybe it's just with yourself. Maybe it's with your cat or your dog, or maybe it's with a candle, maybe it's with your favorite radio show. But to allow for food to not only be nourishing, but to be a time of community and tuning in and mindfulness that can ultimately support mental health and physical health. And we know those two are so interrelated. So whatever that means for you, having gratitude, eating mindfully, eating slowly, talking to people whom you love while you're sharing a meal, whatever that means for somebody, I think food can be a great connector here, and a healer as well.
Oh, wow. That is a wonderful advice. Thank you, Mary. And if people want to follow up with you, where can they locate you?
Oh, I have a website if they'd like to follow me there. It's www.marypurdy.co. So that's marypurdy.co as opposed to .com. It's a little something different I like to do to confuse people.
Oh,
I'm also
right.
on Instagram under Mary Purdy RD. So that's another way to find me too.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much. We have enjoyed all the tips that you have given, and those are very, very valuable. And thank you for joining me today and talking to us.
Well, thank you so much. It's my pleasure. And I hope our conversation was fruitful or vegetable-ful for people there.
Yep. It was very vegetable-ful. Thanks.
Thank you.